Welcome back to the Manage to Win podcast. Today we have Joel Steele. He's written a book, Life Switch, How to Experience the Power of Living On, all caps, on, by discovering your potential, passion, and purpose. Wouldn't that be great if we all did that and we all were in our groove? Well, not to use his term, we all were on in a sincere, humble, grateful way. Wow, the world would be awesome. Joel's got some tips for us, some insights. I think you'll enjoy this. Let's dive in. Joel, welcome to the show. You have written a book that's about to come out called Life Switch, where you talk about people get stuck not because they lack potential, but because they've forgotten how to access it. And I would add, maybe they never knew how to access it. And that's a whole nother story, but we'll see. But talk about that. What are you trying? What's a good example, or what are you trying to achieve with this book?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. And you know, as we talk about the word on, I'm just passionate about that word because, like you said, we all have a life switch. It's not a new concept. It's just putting a name or a label on something we've all had. And you hear people say, "Hey, I flipped the switch." Well, they're talking about their life switch, and it's dark to light. It's, fuzzy to crystal clear. And I just believe people are going through life in one of two modes, on or off. It's pretty simple. And a lot of people don't even realize they're in off mode. And living on, which is what this book is all about, getting people to live on by discovering their potential, passion, and purpose, it's just so exciting to me because when you're living on, you have a why, you have motivation, fuel in the tank, and it powers and propels you to what and where you're trying to accomplish. And every day you're working towards that, you are becoming the person that you want to be, which is an amazing journey in itself.
Yeah. So, I've got a lot of questions, but can you give me an example, whether it's yourself, whether it's somebody else that you've worked with or know, but where do you go? Because I meet a lot of people who get stuck in the off switch. So they have flipped the switch,
right?
Maybe unknowingly, but in the wrong direction.
Yeah, which can happen, right? I always think of the National Lampoon's Christmas movie, which I think everybody has seen. And if you haven't, you probably should just get up and go watch it right now. But, Clark builds this elaborate design of all these Christmas lights and everything. But it doesn't work, not because he did something wrong with what he was doing, but the switch was off and it kept getting put back off. When it finally got flipped on, everything he had worked for or worked towards, it worked. And so we're all pre-wired, kind of like you think about a house, right? You have all these wires in there, but if there's one thing that's not connected correctly, the switch won't provide the power. So you have to understand how you're wired. People are wired a certain way. People are wired different ways. You have to learn how you're wired yourself to be able to flip that switch on and get the power from it, get the positive power, like you said. And I give you an example. In another life, I was a certified personal trainer, back in, 25 years ago or so. And I worked at this one gym, and I thought I was going to come in and clean up because I was in great shape. I was young. I was probably pretty cocky. And I get to this gym, there's these other trainers who are not in good shape. They don't have a professional certification like I had. And I get there and I totally struggle. I can't get anyone to work with me. These other trainers are going around eating Snickers bars and training clients. I remember one guy's belly was hanging below his shirt and he's training people. And I'm thinking, is there something wrong with them or is there something wrong with me? And really what happened was my switch wasn't on. I wasn't passionate. I just sort of felt I had to be anointed this great trainer. And so I left this gym. I had no clients. I never got a trainer. I was terrible. I kind of went home, recalibrated, started at a new gym and flipped my switch on to put everything together. Basically, hey, look, you're in great shape. You love talking about fitness and nutrition. You have experience. What didn't work and why are you doing this? And I just got excited to go back to the goal. It's not strutting around like hot stuff, but strutting around, excited to share my knowledge with someone else to give value. And when I flipped the switch on to do that and recalibrated my purpose and my why, I pretty quickly became the top trainer at my new gym. And I was training so many people, I would have an 8-hour shift where I trained 8 people. So do the math, there's no breaks in there. And I'm the same guy, right? I look the same credentials, but I went from 0 to hero because I flipped my switch on. It made sense out of everything up to that point to get the most out of the situation, to get the most out of myself.
So you talk about potential, passion, and purpose.
Correct.
Thinking about the example you just gave, it's, some people flip the switch, but it lacks the passion, the purpose, the sincerity, and the focus on, what they're doing that's actually meaningful. So it doesn't have the results that you're talking about or the meaning. So how did you flip the switch? Because it sounds like before you had a switch that was on, but it was missing the passion and the purpose. It was more, forgive me in saying this, but it was kind of, from the way you described it, more about you.
Right.
Yeah. And so how did you go through that transformation? Was that a day, an hour, 2 months? I mean, what was kind of the process you went through to kind of, because for a lot of people, that's hard. They just don't get it.
Right. Well, I think that's one of the keys is, everyone wants to be told they're great or they're okay or it's all fine, right? Think about it. It's okay. It's fine. You'll be fine. But that's not helpful sometimes. You need to be told that, you know what, you did a bad job. That doesn't work. That's not going to fly. And I've always, for whatever reason, believed in being honest with myself. And maybe it's because of, other people I know that never were, right? They could never be wrong. So I think I embrace that, hey, maybe I'm wrong here. I'm going to look in the mirror because I think people look ridiculous when they act like they know everything all the time. There's some old saying, he who thinks he knows the most has the most to learn. And so something like that. I probably butchered it. But I was like, okay, there's definitely some element of responsibility here. And if you think about a car accident, there's always some kind of fault unless you're not in your vehicle, right? So in this case, it was there's something on me. Maybe it's partly, maybe it's all on me. And it was just a realization that I wasn't doing what I found out I knew I needed to do. So what I knew I needed to do was proactively go up to people, prospective clients, and tell them about my services. And in that, I was going to have to face rejection. And that's what I was trying to avoid. I wanted to show up and be wanted and assumed I would be. And of course, my first reaction is, well, something wrong with these people and they don't understand. And then in the next gym, I went home, tucked my tail between my legs, went home. And maybe, I can't remember clearly because it was so long ago, but it was probably not that long, maybe a week or two until I went to the new gym. And I went into the new gym, just changed my mentality and was able to say, look, you have to reach out to these people, basically prospect, and you can't control what they say, but you can control your activity. So I controlled my activity. My attitude had already changed. Like I said, I really flipped my switch on. I knew I had potential. I had passion. And when I stopped looking at, hey, I'm doing this for me, I'm doing it for you, that ignited the purpose, the real why, right? We need a deep, meaningful why. You can't say, well, I'm doing this to make $1 million. That doesn't work. It's words. You need it to be feelings. Words converted into feelings. So when I said I'm doing this to help people and I know I can really help them, it's yeah, I actually believe that. That's what I'm trying to do. And so that conviction, you can feel it. Conviction is very palpable, right? You can't see it, but I think people can feel it. And I have the same thing in my financial advising company. Clients feel the conviction that I know what I'm doing and I want to help. And that's what they say, yeah, whatever you think, you're my guy. Not well, let me analyze the prospectus and I'll get back to you. They sense the conviction, just like my personal training clients. They saw I was in great shape, but they felt that I wanted to help them. So that's what really helped out. But the point is, it happened quickly, and it really happens quicker for you when you look in the mirror and you're honest with yourself. Don't sugarcoat it. Give yourself a long, hard look in the mirror, take off the makeup, so to speak, and just be honest and deal with it, right? Because we need to be knocked down sometimes if we want to get up, and not just get up, but get up higher than we were before. Think about trees, bushes, right? You prune them, you cut them back for them to grow bigger and healthier, right? And so people, for some reason, they don't want to be cut back. They don't want to be trimmed or pruned, but it's actually healthy growth. Just like the stock market goes down, which leads to more long-term healthy growth.
Yeah. So I'm curious about something because you talk about it in the fitness area, but also in your financial advising, I'm sure it applies. But when you made this transition, I remember Pat Lencioni writing a book called Getting Naked, where he talked about how you need to do some free consulting first to kind of prove what you can do, kind of provide a test drive. And so I'm wondering how you started where you had to go up and talk with people. Was it just walking up and saying, hey, I have these XYZ skills. Do you want to work? Or did you see them doing something that they could do differently or better or try something different and just go and coach them a little bit and say, yeah, if you have any needs, this is what I do. I train people here.
Yeah. Well, like you said, in that example, I started by giving value. I started giving free advice. I didn't do free sessions, but I would give advice if I saw somebody doing form that wasn't good or someone who seemed a little bit lost. I'm sure you've seen it. There's probably all these different videos and reels where people are working out and it's like, is that person having a stroke or are they working out? I mean, some people don't know what they're doing and, other people, it's not as laughable. It's more like, hey, they can use a trainer. So instead of going over there and making them feel mortified, like, hey, what are you doing? Like, let me show you how to do it. I instead would just give tips and advice and, hey, here's what I would suggest, or here's what I do that works really well, and a way to say, hey, like, you're not wrong, but this might be better. And and people like that. But the other thing is, the other reason why I like doing that more is because it looked like I was training people. So then other people saw me out there training somebody, right? They don't know, hey, did that guy pay? They just saw me working with somebody. So they thought, hey, that guy's in good shape. He's working with somebody. Maybe I should work with that guy.
Yeah.
And so that was a great advertisement. I always knew that my personal physique would be my business card, but the business card in action was really super helpful. So it was just approaching people, being with them out there, being seen, and them understanding. And a lot of those people started to become clients. And as I built that momentum, which was hard at first, then it became kind of like a snowball rolling down the hill, that it was like, hey, you're working with so-and-so, I want to buy a package. And hey, do you have any time to pick up new clients? Sure. And the momentum really started to build up where it was like, wow, I can't even go out and look for new members or new prospects because I have a full schedule of training. And it's funny because it's like, everybody says they want something, right? I want to be successful business. I want to be rich. I want to make or have $1 million. But you have to put yourself there. You have to really visualize what that looks like, right? Being successful, having a successful business. I kind of want to show you my office, but I don't want to move the camera because it'll probably fall. But I mean, I am surrounded by files right now, and I work like an absolute rabid dog sometimes because I do I know what I have to do to be happy with my level of work for my clients. And so I do whatever I have to do. If that's give up some sleep, I'll do it. If it's work early or work late, I'll do it. But you have to just think to yourself, when you want success, you want the fruits of the success, but do you want everything else that comes along with it? Someone might say, well, yeah, I want to have $1 million, but I don't want to work 12-hour days. Well, then you don't want to be successful then. You just want the money. And so you have to be honest with yourself, is because you want to be prepared, right? If you're selling widgets or whatever, if you really want to sell 1 million widgets, you better stock up for that, which means you have to buy you have to buy it. You've got to put the money out. You've got to have a loan, high monthly payments. You're going to have to store it somewhere. Don't buy 50 widgets and say, yeah, I'm going to be a millionaire. If you want to be successful, go there physically, but make sure you go there mentally to make sure that's where you actually want to be. Because if you really do all the right things, you'll be there. But the question is, do you want to?
Reminds me of the old saying, be careful what you wish for. So let me backtrack a little bit. So you talked about we're all different, and you shared about how you like candid feedback, and you can receive that, and you can process it, evaluate what you want to adopt, or maybe it gives you another idea. And that's more of a driven type A person. You are in the same boat. So that's fine. There's two other behavioral patterns that can be pretty common. One is what I call the Teflon person. And you alluded to them. So like, not my fault. I don't have to own that, blah, blah, blah. I don't, doesn't matter how much they messed up, how rude they were, how mean they were, whatever it was. Like, well, no, I said that, but it's true. So it really doesn't matter. It was mean or it was whatever. So you've got that person. Let's stay with that one for a moment. How do you get somebody like that to open up, to consider, hey, if you really thought consider some changes, could you really connect with your potential? And how does that connect with your passion? They're usually passionate about something, right? That a Teflon person usually is distorted on whatever that something is. It's a partial truth that they've distorted it in some way, not necessarily intentionally, but right. How do you help that person follow your process?
I think a big part of it has to do with...
And if you have an example, by the way.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a story.
Well, I mean, just on the surface of it, there's a relationship between giving and getting. And most people are focused on getting, right? I know a lot of people, they're always going out, they have their hand out, they want this, they want that. They drive in a way that's very selfish for them. They beep at the person who doesn't let them in, but then they don't want to let somebody else in for them. Like they're just gimme. And then they go to church on Sunday and they ask for, everything from God. And it's like, why is he not answering my prayers? There's a relationship between giving and getting, and it's not written down. But from my anecdotal experience, the more you give, the more you get. Yeah. And if some of these people you just mentioned would understand that relationship, take 5 seconds to think about, maybe there's some unwritten law of the universe that says if I become more selfless, less selfish, more selfless, maybe I can get more if I give more. But they a lot of times say, it doesn't really make sense to me, so I'm just going to keep trying to get. So I've seen that. Personally, I just have had different instances where when I give money, whether it's like literally giving money to a charity or time or effort, or just give good karma out there, it comes back. I've seen this my whole life. And so I keep doing it because I just believe in it. But I don't think a lot of people understand that. They don't understand it because they just can't take the time to see it. But I would hope that people, if they're not where they want to be, right? Part of why I wrote this book is for people that are stuck or they're assessing their lives, whether they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, they're starting out or restarting, maybe they're divorced, maybe they had a business, maybe they're between jobs, is like you just said, is like looking in the mirror, looking at blame versus responsibility. Like, are you to blame for your circumstances? Or regardless, do you want to take responsibility for where you're at and also take responsibility for where you're going to go next? Because placing blame, there's no points, there's no monetary benefit if you're right? The court of blame, there's no winners. But responsibility, when you take responsibility, whether it's your fault or not, that's when you could really start to work and work your way up that mountain and climb as high as you want to go. And I'll tell you real quick, a real estate story about blame versus responsibility. I had a college friend, former roommate. He wanted to do houses together, wanted to rehab the houses. We came up with a deal. I would be the money man and he would do the work. And I said, well, that sounds good because I barely know how to use a screwdriver and he had no money. And we trusted each other because of our relationship back in college. Well, we started to do some properties. We did 2, 3, they worked out pretty well, made some money. We shared the profit. So I wrote out all the checks. When the house sold, we shared the profit. If the house lost money, I had to eat that. So I thought, okay, fine, I'll take that risk. It made sense. Pretty sweet deal for him. Well, he started having a bunch of kids. He ended up having a whole starting 5 basketball team. They had 5 kids, and he kept telling me he was going to do the work, but he kept hiring other people because he didn't have the time anymore to do the work. The last property we did was an absolute nightmare. It wasn't just rehab. It was a knockdown house on 4 acres backing up to a golf course. I don't know how I said yes to this, but I ended up having to build the house from scratch on my own. So basically, removed him from the equation because he wasn't doing anything. It wasn't his area of expertise anymore. He could rehab a bathroom and a kitchen, but not build a house. Anyway, there was a lot of points in time over many years during this house. I owned the house for about 6 or 7 years. I could blame a million things and a million people, but I knew at the end of the day, it was my butt and my bag on the line. So I just kept taking responsibility, never blame, to focus on what I needed to do to get out of this house, to get out of this situation. And ultimately, I did. I didn't make a lot of money, but I didn't lose $500,000 or $1 million that I easily could have if I would have just sat back and got angry and pointed the finger. So that to me is my probably best, most recent case of taking responsibility and not worrying about the blame.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you, you're also alluding to something else I would suggest is that you looked at everything you could own, learn from. You also recognized where the other person or other attributes could have been different, and it affected the outcome. But it's that old, what is it, the serenity prayer? Be aware of what's under your control and let go of the things that are not. I'm butchering that one. My turn. But that's basically it. I want to go back, though. You talked about people giving to get. So I would suggest there's a third G in there. And maybe it's part of the front end. Maybe it's the bridge between the two. And it's gratitude. Mm-hmm. And so if you go into giving with gratitude because you're thankful of what you have, and then you are grateful for for the experience of giving. You're not doing it as a chore. You're open to how you can grow as an individual. There's another one, grow as an individual. Then you ultimately will get something. But if you have the gratitude, maybe you're not looking for the huge material get. You actually have more of a healthy get where you're just going to be grateful for anything. It's kind of like humble yourself before God. And so what are your thoughts on that? Am I off track, or is that?
No, there's definitely, that's an important thing. Gratitude, when I wrote this book, it came largely out of gratitude, actually. I started writing it was like 10 years ago. It was right around Thanksgiving, right? Which is the ultimate time to be grateful because things slow down. It's a warm time of year, not temperature wise, but feeling wise, quality, family, friends, that kind of thing. But gratitude is really important because if you can't see what you have, you can only see what you don't have. It's like, what are you doing? It's like you're missing out. And I have a friend, I always like to talk about this scenario when we're talking about gratitude and other areas too. But my friend is really wealthy. He manages, he's got over $1 billion he manages, makes several $1 million a year, but he's always miserable. He's always looking for the perfect investment. He doesn't sleep at night. He's just on this losing mission, even though he's got everything that everyone else will look at and say, this guy must be the happiest, luckiest guy in the world. And he's always so negative and miserable. And he had a lot of health issues because it was like eating away at him. His brother is making like basic money, like $50,000, but is happy as a clam. And so, the multimillionaire brother's jealous of his brother who, doesn't have a lot, doesn't make a ton of money, but he's happy. He's happy with himself. He's excited to get out of bed every day and feels that he has a purpose and a vision. And so over time, my friend was like, enough is enough. And so he started to work towards getting out of the hole he got in, which I think started by being more grateful for everything that he has. He stopped looking for this unicorn, because it's like, we talked about the word why. Like, why are you trying to do this? And what's the purpose? What's the end goal? And they always say that life is a journey, not a destination. He was looking for this destination and missing out on this amazing journey that he's been on. And, what helped me over the years is realizing that we're just anyone listening today has an opportunity to be on a journey. And that is something by itself to be grateful for, right? There's people that aren't here. There's people that that unfortunately passed away. And those people, their journey is over. So we should be happy just to have today and tomorrow. And I've always liked the saying, you never know what can happen in a day. Some people will be anxious about that. I think it's exciting because you don't know what's going to happen, who you're going to meet, what you might see. And so if you're grateful for some of these basic things, you can become very grateful for the bigger things. And, it's a fast-paced life, right? We're always looking for more, bigger, better. You think you're doing well, then you meet someone else who does better and you suddenly feel inferior. All these different things. Like when you look outside your own life and your own house, if you will, you're always going to find reasons to feel inferior if you're trying to compete against someone, against the most money, the most friend, the most whatever, but you got to look into inventory of what you have and stop worrying about everyone and everything else. I just think that's good basic advice for any topic. And it's something that we probably all should work to get better at because we all have many blessings, but for some weird reason, we always count the ones that we don't have.
Well, I think part of it's life experience, upbringing. And I think also part of it is just all the media messages we get that always say you're not good enough, you don't have enough unless you buy this, unless you do this. And let me just touch on one other thing. So we talked about the person who's Teflon person, who's, like you brought up, playing the blame game and, not my fault and own it. And then you have another type of person where, because of their life experience, it can be hard for them to receive feedback and direction because it comes across as condemnation or correction. And that can be a struggle for people. So have you had a situation there where you worked with somebody like that and you found the switch and they were able to feel more comfortable with getting feedback from people they trust?
Yeah. I mean, I've talked to friends about it. I've even dealt with some clients with this over the years, where they're viewing things, I would say, it's the wrong way, but you've got to be sensitive because like you said, people are the way they are, their veneer, their exterior. There's a lot that's been packed on and added on over the years, but ultimately we are who we are at our core. And if we can strip away the hard veneer, the exterior, the experiences, especially the bad ones, and you get to the core of who you are, I mean, your core should be unaffected by whatever happens to you on the outside. Like if you think about the earth, right? The earth has a core. The core doesn't change if it rains or if it snows or if it's a bad day, right? The core is what it is. But the outside, right? The grass can be green, it can be brown, all that. So it's understanding the difference between who you are and what's happening to you. And so you got to understand who you are at your core. And I try to explain that to people, when you were younger and you said, one day when I retire, well, who did you want to be? What did you want to do? And a lot of people, they don't know, they don't remember because it's been so long. A lot of people forget who they are or who they wanted to be, who they were, because they have so much stuff packed on around it, right? You've got to kind of like unbox this and you've got to go through all these layers. So I do a lot of that counseling with clients, but I've talked to friends about it as well. And that's one of the things I enjoy about speaking is helping people find themselves because, you're you. Okay, David, you're you. I see you. But man, like there's the inner core of who you are that if you don't know who it is, how is anyone else going to know, recognize, appreciate those benefits, features, elements of yourself?
Yeah. And you recognize and appreciate those things too. So let's talk about this 3-step thing. You talk about living on. I love the fact that you focus on the word on. I think that's great. I really do.
Thank you.
So that's great. And then you get the potential, passion, and purpose. So even if somebody doesn't fully recognize their potential, maybe give me a story of how you helped someone identify, oh, this is my passion. And based on that passion, I'm going after this purpose. This is going to be my purpose. This is going to be meaningful for me to go from A to B.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a really quick example just because it's, kind of right here in front of me. But my son, right, he's 17 now, really into sports, very entrepreneurial, started little businesses, little tic-tac type things. But he really is into sports. We watch sports, we talk about all the time. And I was like, how can we use this as a business for you? And really trying to figure it out. And started to talk about, well, I want to get into stocks, Dad, like what you do. I said, yeah, but you're not passionate about that, right? You can make a good amount of money, but you've got to be passionate if you're going to find real success. And we started talking about getting him involved with sports cards because it's like there's valuation. It's like stocks, right? The values go up and down. He's passionate for business, sports, and he's already doing the stuff will fall on these players in the pro sports leagues. So anyway, so I get him into sports cards and he takes to it like a fish in the water. And he, within, I would say about a year of doing sports cards, he was bringing in $3,000 a month of buying and selling sports cards and just really knew the market, knew the product. I mean, watching him negotiate at 15, 16 years old with these, grown men, I was like, wow, he really got good. But I think it happened because he was passionate about it and he was learning. It didn't feel like learning. It didn't feel like the classroom. It was fun.
Yeah.
But I mean, ended up getting a tax document for him because he made so much money that first year.
But that's great because, and I remember I had a client, he was the VP of sales at SNL Integrated. I can't remember his name, great guy, but he really loved guitars. Now they sold all this AV equipment, sound equipment, churches, corporations and stuff, but he really liked guitars. And just as a hobby, he made extra money just buying and selling guitars because he, like what you're describing your son, it was a passion of his. I don't know how much a purpose it was, but it was a passion. So he just loved doing it. And you mentioned success. So your son had to know what success was. So how would you define success?
For in general or for him, you mean?
For a client, for him, I mean, starting with him, but then in general for our audience, because that's how you define it. If you're going to go from point A to point B, I talked about pursuing targets, like goals, targets, like a target destination. Then, what is that? So with your son, what was it? And then how is that with your clients? Because once again, like finance, you brought it up. The money needle moves. Benjamin Franklin, I think, said, money's a vacuum. As soon as you think you caught something, you want something else.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. With my son, it was really just to have a business, right? To be able to buy the inventory and then sell it. So that to him was super cool, right? Transacting business. That was his, I would say, definition of success. But his potential was like, wow, I can make thousands of dollars doing this. And it got to the point where, when he would take jobs, summer jobs, it was like, why would I work somewhere for 8 hours a day and know exactly what I'm going to make when I could just do my thing, work hard and make whatever I make? There's no real cap on what I do. And I had to say, I don't disagree. Like, it seemed ridiculous to me that you would go somewhere, sit there for 8 hours and know that you're only going to make, whatever it was, $15 an hour times 8. It's like, that's it. It's like you walk in, it's like, you're not going to make any more than that. Like, that would drive me nuts. And so he saw that potential that he could make way more money per hour, if you will, than being capped. But the bigger question about what is success, or how do you define success? Again, we talked about my friend and his brother, right? If my friend who had tons of money, he tried to use money as success, but like you said, it was like a vacuum. It was like never enough. He was never going to win. It was like a baseball game that doesn't ever end. Yeah. Versus his brother, success was being able to just live each day and be happy and enjoy himself. You see these people, they go into the coffee stores, they hold the door, they're pleasant, they banter with employees. The other people that are always on to the next thing, it's like they're gruff, they're hurried, they don't have time to say please or thank you. I don't know if about you, but I've held doors for people where they don't even say anything. Oh, and I love to do it. I always go, "You're welcome," even though they don't say thanks. And my kids started doing that too. And it's not to like be a jerk. It's just like, hey, like wake up. Like there's a lot of people on this planet. The world doesn't revolve around anybody. And it's like you've got to look up, right? You talked about destinations. I talk about it a lot. I'm a huge proponent of understanding point A and point B, right? Point A is where you at now. Yep. And if that's not where you want to be, where is your point B? And then you've got some people that don't know where they want to go. You've got some people that don't really know where they are. They're just on the hamster wheel, not sure where that is. And then some people, of course, don't know either one. And so, I remember like for years, people would tell me they want to eat healthy. They would come train with me. Then I would watch what they eat. I would ask them what they eat. Oh, I have a salad. And then they would like tell me, I'm like, wait, so you're getting a salad with cheese, 2 kinds of cheese, and, ranch dressing? I'm like, you're eating like 70 grams of fat. And they're like, no, it's just a salad. I'm like, it may be a salad, but it's a very unhealthy salad. So it's like, if you want to get in good shape, okay, what does that look like? Like physically, what's it look like pounds wise, muscle tone, and then where are you now? How far are you from that goal? Right? And then once you figure out your point A and your point B, you want to find the most efficient way to get there. And so from my experiences in life, I've had a very inefficient path from A to B where I wanted to be, right? Because I opened up my restaurant business early on, and that took me way further from the goal that I wanted to be at. But I didn't give up on where I wanted to be, right? My point B was becoming successful, having a good life, enjoying myself, family, all that. Starting a healthy fast food restaurant in my early 20s was my point A, to get point A to point B. Well, I got detoured. And so I got sent back really further away from my destination, but I didn't lose sight of it, right? How many times do we get a detour when we're driving? It's frustrating, it's annoying, but what do? We just keep going, right? Like nobody abandons their car and says, oh, forget this, I'm out of here. You just get out of your car and you just leave, right? Nobody would do that. But people are doing that to their dreams. They're doing it to their goals. They're doing it to their success that they wanted. They're just getting out of the car and they're abandoning it. And so it's like, look, you're going to have detours, right? There's no way you could drive across this country and not think you're going to have a detour at some point, right? So if you're committed to where you're trying to go, just keep going, right? It might take you longer. You might take a step back before you take a step forward. As long as you keep going and you know where you're trying to go, you'll get there. It's like GPS, like you'll get there eventually. So just stay focused on where you're trying to go.
Well, it's interesting what you bring up with your restaurant failure that, I hear it, didn't used to hear it, but now particularly I hear with people of faith where they are saying, okay, well, what am I supposed to learn through this? And whether you're taught about your failure in business or at some point, if your son wanted to go work for someone, it may not be for the paycheck. I mean, one of the greatest places to learn management can be McDonald's. I don't want to go work at McDonald's, but they are so detailed and structured. Those franchises, Taco Bell, the other ones, they are like boom, boom, boom. I remember many, many years ago, decades ago, I stopped at a McDonald's. I don't go to them now. I've been for a long time, but I stopped, and behind me, there was a young manager speaking to like someone he was training up. And he's like, okay, this last week, our labor came in at 18%. It's got to be 16%. So what are we going to do so that moving forward, we're matching that number? And so you can go there for learning. It's like going to school, not for the paycheck. I'm not saying that's what your son should do. But the beauty about it is, tell me some of the lessons you learned when you had that failed restaurant business. You're talking about healthy fast food. I'm all into that. I wish you'd succeeded.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Well, me too, to a degree, but I'll talk about why it actually worked out better than I imagined. But, I'm with you. I don't eat fast food, and I did when I was young, like much younger, before I was even into health and fitness. Then I realized I was like, whoops, I probably shouldn't eat 6 croissant sandwiches in the morning anymore. But I actually worked at Burger King right out of college, because that was like my graduate program, was working at a fast food restaurant, very respected, established restaurant. And I, of course, didn't make much money, but I got a wealth of knowledge from that. And fun fact is, I did not put a single thing in my mouth at Burger King. I did not have a single French fry, nothing. In fact, I would come home and shower every day because I was covered in grease.
Oh, gosh.
I thought to myself, if this is what happens when you're around it, like what happens when you eat it? So, and then, what helped fuel me through those days was the fact that I was building a competitor, right? A solution to the problem of these fast food chains having cheap food on every street corner, making it too easy to eat unhealthy. Oh, that really fueled me to do that. But my passion, my purpose, all that I thought was to be a healthy restaurateur. I really thought that was it. That was a mega life switch moment I had when I was about 21 years old, hit me like a ton of bricks, and I just ran with it. And the potential was to, actually open it, which nobody thought I would, but I did. I opened up 3 stores in Philly, and it was really hard. Had I known what was involved, thinking back, it's like, oh my gosh, how did I do that? But I had my point B. I was going to do it. It wasn't if, it was when. I didn't know where. I just knew I was going to do it. And every day I made progress towards that goal until it finally opened. When it opened, it's kind of like with pro sports, right? You make the playoffs. It's like, yeah, we made it. But then like 5 minutes later, it's like, okay, let's get serious now, because now the real season begins.
Oh, yeah.
So, the restaurant opened, and then it was extremely difficult. But, if it didn't get wiped out essentially as quick as it did, this was in 2003 that it opened. If it didn't get wiped out, 2008's Great Recession would have wiped me out, right? It wiped out a lot of businesses. And had I made it, I might have just been hanging in, making, not that much money, barely seeing my family, who I didn't even really have a family at the time. That was a good time to do it, right out of school, just to work all the time. And ultimately, it failing quick was helpful, because COVID undoubtedly would have put it out of business.
Yeah.
Even now, in a pretty good economy, restaurants are just closing abruptly. So anyway, it worked out because I got into a business where I could have more time. I could be flexible. I was there for the birth of both of my kids. I've been to every sporting event, dance event, graduation, recital with both of my kids. And that to me is so important. And just like, I would regret that if I missed all those moments.
So did your parents do that with you? Did they make every one of your sporting events?
My mom made most of my stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she would come to most of the things. I remember the one thing she didn't come to. At the time I was mad, but obviously, I let that one go pretty quickly. But I didn't do it because I wanted to get perfect attendance as a parent. I did it because I really enjoyed seeing that. Being around kids, makes you smile, we talked about gratitude, right? Let some of the worry that we take on as adults kind of roll off our skin. And say, hey, you know what? It's fine. If I'm at a soccer game at 4:00 on a sunny day, it's like, you know what? Maybe I don't have to worry about filing that one piece of paper or getting that last, thing done, that last trade done that I could do today or tomorrow doesn't make a difference. So, not being a martyr for the sake of just getting a lot of stuff done and telling people I'm working really hard. But anyway, the point is, had the restaurant succeeded, I might not have been able to have the life that has everything in it that I really wanted. And so I took a big step back. And then as I built this new life, operating a financial company, I had that freedom to work really hard, but to not have to do that when there was something else that was also really important. So it gave me really good balance between business and personal that I would not have had with a restaurant, because, you have to be there. You have to be there like 7 days a week. And so, it just one of those things where I didn't ask for it. I didn't want that to happen. But sometimes we think we know what we want, and we're wrong. And that's another thing. People,
good point.
And it's still like this. Like, I think I want this to happen. I wanted, like right now I'm doing a lot of speaking. I got booked to speak somewhere. I was all excited, Fortune 100 company. And then I realized that, wait a second, one of the things I talk about is being with my family. They're most important to me, that I feel alive and fulfilled. Yet they're going somewhere else as a family, and I'm going across the country to go speak to people I don't know. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm starting to get backwards on what's important to me here.
Good catch.
And so I was able to cancel the speaking gig, and they said, it's fine, don't worry about it. We have someone else. It's not a problem at all. And I'm joining my family on this trip now. And it was such a weird thing to go through this, because I'm like, I really wanted to speak so bad. But then I really thought about, but what's really more important, right? What would cause a regret? And I could feel this regret brewing, that if I did this corporate speaking event, I was going to regret that I missed out on great quality family time. And, I ended up canceling it. And the second I did it, I felt so much better. I felt like me again, because like, this is what I do and why. And so I thought that was just an interesting anecdotal story about really focusing on what's most important. It's not just what's important, but what's most important, right? I'm old fashioned in a way where I think you can get out a piece of paper and write a list of pros and cons with any decision. And generally the best choice is the column that has, the most answers in it. If something has more cons than pros, don't do it. If something has more pros than cons, it's probably what you should do.
Yeah, and, Ben Franklin style.
Yeah. So to me, that still works, right? There, again, like I said earlier, a lot of people look for the perfect option, the perfect choice, and it really exists, even if at all. So you've got to weigh it out. You've got to balance pros versus cons. And I think we should just do that on a regular basis. But a lot of times it's like, well, how? Again, writing things down, seeing things. A lot of people are visual. So when you can see something, it really helps you understand it better. It helps it get in your brain better. And when you make decisions based on facts, I think you make better decisions.
Yeah, and certainly writing it down and then going back to it. So there is some accountability, some follow through. So my prior podcast guest, James Riley, is an entrepreneur, and he got some coaching on having guiding principles and did a similar thing where he was in a peer group where the group was saying, hey, you need to grow your business. He goes, well, I don't want to grow my business because if I grow my business, I'm going to be divorced and I'm going to be abandoning my family. And they're like, well, then, you need to make a choice. But, if you're going to be in this group, then maybe you need to divorce and you just need to grow the company. So, and he chose against that, which he's not regretted. Mm-hmm. And the reason I asked on attendance at sporting events, you do that because you love it and you do that. And I've done similar things with my kids. But I remember my parents, I was the youngest of three. They made every sporting event, even when I was terrible. And I was terrible for many years. So until I played water polo, then I found my groove. And so, but they were there. Even my grandfather, who was a workaholic on my mom's side, would come and pace the water polo deck, saying, way to go, Dave. And I'll never forget it. And like you brought up that time, that family vacation, and I'm just saying this for the audience, not for you, because I know we're on the same page, but you realized, hey, I have this one chance to go on this one trip when my kids are this age, and I'll never have that other opportunity again. Mm-hmm. How can I give that up for the speaking gig? I'll have another speaking gig. They'll come about. Yes, I'll have another family vacation, but I won't have this one when my kids are this age. And before I know it, they're going to be 30, they're going to be 40, and those times are gone. So, kudos to you.
Thank you. No, you're 100% right. And that's the thing is like weighing out, sometimes if you can't make the decision on what's best, look at what would cause the potential bigger regret, right? Yeah. Because regret is that feeling that doesn't go away, like pain and frustration, like these feelings, they fade, they subside and go away over time. But regret oftentimes grows. It gets worse over time. And so you want to make decisions where you are avoiding regret. You want to minimize regret, but ideally you want to avoid it. And I could feel it bubbling up that I was starting to regret my decision and was going to regret it even more. I put myself in my own shoes when I'm going to be out there, what it'll look and feel like. And I've been to this place before a couple of times in Palm Desert. And I just picture myself just being isolated, lonely, knowing my family was away, and just being frustrated and aggravated about the whole thing. And it was almost like, it was so real, it felt like it was happening. And then it was like, snap back and was like, you know what? Maybe you don't have to do this. And that's when I reached out. I said, listen, if it's going to mess you guys up, I'll go, because I committed. I said, but if it doesn't mess you guys up, maybe we should revisit this. They said, no, it's no problem at all. And like I said, I backed out of it, and I'm not only not regretting that at all, I'm excited. I feel great. It's a relief. And that's the other thing is like we talked about, I mentioned earlier being a martyr. Like sometimes we feel like we should do something, it's like, I'm going to work. I have a lot of clients that have done this. I work like 10-hour days. I still work overtime. Did your boss know? No. It's like, well, people don't know if they don't know. So it's like, if you're really sacrificing something, why? Is it for, just the spirit of something? But it's like, you have one life to live. So I talked earlier about being selfless. Sometimes you do have to be a little more selfish because you only get one life to live. And so again, a balance, you've got to find the balance, but sometimes you've got to put yourself first, right? My kids weren't saying, Dad, don't go. It was me. So I was being a little selfish because I felt that was the best thing for me. So balance it out, right? If someone's just tuning into the show now, they're hearing me say you got to be selfish, they're probably thinking interesting, but it's the balance of knowing when to be selfless and knowing when to be a little selfish.
Okay, well, I like it. And so let's talk about your book and just kind of close out that way, because I love this life switch and where you're talking about being on and on in a sincere way with pursuing your passion, pursuing a purpose, and you are more aware of your potential. So what would you like to see people do? How would you like to see them transformed as a result of reading this book?
Yeah. Well, it's broken down in 3 parts, and the 3 parts are the 3 Ps that you just mentioned. And it starts with potential, and it starts with that for a reason. I label that the exciting part, right? The first thing is to understand. I want people to understand that whatever you want to do, you can do it, right? So that to me is fundamentally and factually true. You can do whatever you really want to do. You have the potential. And what's cool about potential is the more you see and the more you get out of yourself, the more you realize that your potential is even bigger than you thought, right? The potential is like a muscle. You can keep growing it bigger and more sculpted than you thought even before. It's a really kind of unlimited to a degree. So that's the first part, is that you can do anything, and your potential is probably way higher than you ever thought it was. And that's for anybody, anyone. You can be a pro athlete. There's still a lot of potential to do other things off the field or court. And so potential is always something that can go up. The passion part is, like you said, everyone has passion. Some people, they don't know what that is. It might be something silly, but passion is there underneath, your day job probably. And so you want to find that, because if you can do things that you're passionate about, you will enjoy your life more. Even if you hate your job, if you can inject passion in your life, you don't need to make a radical change. You don't need to break up with your partner or quit your job, move across the country. Just introduce some passion into your life. Maybe it's first thing in the morning or after work. Maybe it's on your lunch break. And then purpose, again, people are walking around and just don't know what they're doing and why. You have to have a mission, a why, a purpose if you want to get the most out of each day. Because if you don't have that, how do you know if you had a good day, right? It's not because you made money or, somebody, gave you a winning lottery ticket. But if you have a purpose, did you do something today to live out that purpose or pursue that purpose? And that's how you win every day, because every day has a takeaway. And as long as it's towards your goal, then each day can be a win. Each day can be productive. Even if it's a bad day, you can learn a lot and take a lot from those bad days.
Fabulous. Well, Joel, as I mentioned before we started, I expected that we could probably talk all day and not be done. And that's the way it's been. So I didn't realize time had flown. So if people want to learn more about you or your book, where do they go? I congratulate you. I also thank you for being on the show, but where can they learn more? Because I love the title of the book. I love where you're trying to go. And so would love to see people check it out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The easiest thing to do is just go to my website, which is bookjoelsteele.com, or you can just Google Life Switch Joel Steele. And my page just talks a little bit about me. But the reason I talk about me is because it's things I went through, lessons, experiences that I think other people can go through their own version of these experiences and become the best version of themselves. Because like I said before, everybody is wired, right? You're built for success. But if you don't understand the wiring and how to use it to flip the switch on, you're not gonna have it. So it's like, it's right there. It's all within you internally. So if you can really make sense of it and are able to power your switch on and live your life to the fullest with the 3 Ps, man, it's powerful, it's fun. And the bottom line is, if people are more passionate, excited, and living with purpose, just imagine how more positive people would be, right? How much more we'd enjoy our time on this planet if people were more friendly and upbeat, because they weren't walking around with their heads down living off. If we're all living on, it really brightens up the world, and that's the goal here.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.